Hi everybody. Last week I made a small video or live stream about the 6mm miniatures, and my lighting was very poor basically. So let me try this again this week. If you watched it last week, then you're not going to get much new, but at least you'll be able to see something. So what I want to talk about is 6mm scale miniatures, which is basically the old Epic 40K scale. I don't know if you remember that one from the 90s, I guess. And it's just a scale that I love very much. I've been building in it lately. You might have seen this one on my accounts, or this one. And this is 6mm, so it's a lot smaller than the standard Games Workshop. If you look at standard Games Workshop, it's 28mm scale, which you can see here. And the scale means that if you measure from the foot till the eyes, that would be about 28mm. So a 6mm scale would be measuring from the foot to the eye, 6mm, which turns out to be something like this, which is very tiny. And there's some discussion about whether the new Adeptus Titanicus, so the Titans, is actually 10mm or 6mm, but for this story it doesn't really matter. So what I want to do is I want to show you a couple of options for adding small miniatures to Adeptus Titanicus, because Games Workshop is currently producing Adeptus Titanicus miniatures, which I had one somewhere to show, but I forgot. Oh, so professional. Look at me go. So these are the knights. They have titans as well. Very cool miniatures, but they don't produce. The range isn't huge. So they have knights and they have titans, which is very awesome, but they don't have small figures and they don't have tanks. So for me, that's missing a bit. So this is the current knight size, which is roughly the same size as a Space Marine on the regular scale. And what I really loved about the old Epic is that they also had these guys. So this is a 6mm Space Marine. And I don't know what it is, but I just really like it. It's tiny, it's small, but it still has a lot of detail, and you can do some very cool stuff with it. The only thing is that these old Epic miniatures, they're not for sale anymore. By Games Workshop it is. You can still find these on eBay or in lots of other places, but they're not cheap. Well, these were produced in, as I said, in the 90s, so the detail isn't that great either. It clearly shows. And what you also have is that the style is the old style as well. So if you take a Rhino, it's going to be the 90s era style Rhino and not the current Rhino. So there's going to be a little bit of a mismatch between your miniatures if you really want to go for the old Epic style. Now, so the question is there something else? Well, of course there is, because you've already seen those. Because what you have here on top, so this is all based on the Adeptus Titanicus Spires kit. So I built that into like a walking chapel. So it's a Spires kit cut into bits and rearranged, but there's this small guy on top, and these legs you might not be recognizing, because those are coming from a different brand. And a different brand is what I'm going to be mainly talking about today. That's Vanguard Miniatures. Vanguard Miniatures is a company in the UK which casts their own miniatures, and well, I'm actually very happy with them. So I got a couple of examples for you, which I wanted to show. And the main thing with Vanguard is, while they have very nice miniatures and very cool miniatures, it's not endorsed by. It's not the same IP as Games Workshop. So it's similar, but it's not the same. So you have like these Terminator style guys here, but they're not actual Terminators. So Vanguard made up their own version of the Terminators. Now let me get this into focus. which look really nice and are actually quite close to the actual Terminators by Games Workshop. But yeah, they're not the same. So these look like a little bit of the look a little bit like the Cataphractii, which is a weird name. Terminators by Games Workshop, and they're called Knights or something. I'm not sure actually. So that's one, and they also have like the regulars, which is more the normal humans, which are very cool too. So these are very close to the Sevlar chem dogs, I think. So the long trench coats and the gas masks on their faces. So this is more of a commissar type. He has this commissar hat. I don't know if you can really see it well. Yeah, it's kind of in focus. And these are very well proportioned as well. So I mean, it's going to be quite tough to get good proportions on such small miniatures. It's possible, but it's not very easy. But these are actually quite good in my eyes. Come on, focus. Yes. And they also got the scale quite good. So if you compare a regular human to a Terminator, the Terminator is really quite a bit above the regular human. So the scale seems to be quite consistent with the 40K universe, which is nice. Come on. Okay, I need to do something else about that. So these two are both from Vanguard miniatures. These are called the Noven. The Noven Elite range is this, and this is the Noven Regulars range. And they also have the Noven Convent, which is like the Sisters of Battle, which are very cool too. So this is like a lady with a sword and some wings, like the Seraphim, I think they're called in 40K now. And again, they're very, very nice. They're well detailed, look good, are close enough to be recognized as Sisters of Battle, while not being the same, because then Games Workshop would probably be quite angry. And I use these a lot. They also have, let me see, they call these the Cyber Shadows, which is Adeptus Mechanicus. Of their own invention. So this is more like a Scutarii Ranger with a cowl and a long robe. But they also have orcs, which they call Skinners. So same ID, different name as that goes. This is like a mega knob in mega armor, or a big knob in mega armor with a big claw and some kind of a huge gun. And they also have lots of other cool stuff like tanks. This is a very big tank. I think this should be the same, similar size to a Baneblade probably. So if I put my Space Marine next to it, you'll see the scale. So that's quite a big tank. The lighting is not helping me again. They have robots like walkers, which are very cool, and they have smaller tanks. They also have personnel carriers, so this is like a truck where you can load something in the back. They also have personnel carriers. And for the Cyber Shadows range, they have these crawler tanks, which I really love, and which is also the basis I used for my walking chapel. So normally it's a tank like this, which is very similar to the Dune crawler from Games Workshop. But I used the legs to make this walking church out of it. And as you can see, the styles match very well. If you compare the Games Workshop style of the Spires kit, which is the building itself, if you compare that to the miniature on top, which is Vanguard again, and the legs, I mean, it matches quite nicely in scale and detail. So there's not a big difference between those two, which is very nice. And what I also did is I built this one some time ago. And what I did here is you can see the guy on top, hopefully. Reposition my camera a bit. Yeah. So this guy I built I made him to look like a statue on top. And those miniatures work very well. There's also like, here's a Cyber Shadow again. So this is a Tech Priest, I guess. And on top there's a Titan Pilot. Princeps, I think the name is, by Games Workshop. But it matches very well. So there's a small guard at the back as well. And I mean, they don't stand out as being weird or off. So the styles match quite nicely. Now from the Vanguard website, you can also get different brands. So this is all the 6mm range by Vanguard itself. They also have a 3mm range, which I can also show you because I bought a 3mm range Thunder Hawk, which is this one. Like, so it's not an actual Thunderhawk, but it's their own version again, of course. You know, it's going on. Yes, there we are. And that's really a step smaller again. So if I take my my trusty old Space Marine, where did he go? Yeah, here he is. And hold it next to it, you can see that the Space Marine is huge in comparison. But again, the detail on these is still very nice and pretty cool. They also have tanks, and I don't think they have miniatures, like figures. I actually don't know. I haven't checked. You could check out the website of Vanguard. Maybe they might have some figures on the 3mm scale too. But it's mainly tanks and planes and Titans in that scale. So that's cool. I wanted to have these to get some wings, maybe to build into I don't know, a jetpack or whatever. That might be cool to do, but I'll figure that one out. I just like the miniatures a lot, and I wanted to have them. But as I said, they also have other ranges. So on the Vanguard website, you have the Onslaught range, which is a different brand. I really like these. These are called the Athena Sisters. And it's from, so it's a different producer, but Vanguard sells them, basically. That's what happens. And these are quite similar to the Adeptus Custodes, I say, in look and feel. So these are really knightly with shields and spears and some robes. I really like these. They also have some cultists and some chaos-like stuff. And again, so this is a different producer. It's Onslaught. I don't know the name of the producer, but the range is called Onslaught. But it's not actual 40K because it's not produced by 40K. So they're not allowed to use the 40K license, but they make miniatures that fit quite well in the range. And so the look is the same. And if you take those Athena Knights, I put one on the back here of this one. If painted, they look roughly like this. I think they're very cool, and they work very well in this. Yeah, so Vanguard sells a couple of ranges that will fit with 40K, because there's different brands that sell 6mm or 10mm or whatever as well, but it's not 40K. So you'll see a lot of ranges that are more World War I or World War II, but they will never really fit with the Games Workshop ranges. So that's for me that doesn't really help. And there's two other things that I want to do to show you that are in the similar size of these. So as I said, Epic or Adeptus Titanicus is 6mm scale, and 6mm scale translates to 1:300 scale. Now there's a 1:300 is actually a scale that's also used on architectural models, scale models, and this is a white model, so this is not going to show well. But if you design a building, it's usually nice to have a physical model of the building, and 1:300 is actually a quite common scale to use for architecture. And they sell some models in that range. So this is a car, like a sports car. If I turn it upside down, it becomes a bit clearer. Which in size is actually quite okay. So if I hold my Space Marine next to it, the car will be actually a bit big for my Space Marine. Or my Space Marine will be small compared to the car, whichever way you want to call it, of course. But if you don't put them too close together onto your model or your diorama, it might actually work, so that you could get away with it probably. They also have figures, on the 1 to 300 architectural skill, but the problem there is that they're flat. So if I take my Space Marine again, my trusty old Space Marine, come on, focus. Then it's three-dimensional, right? It has a side and a back, and it's rounded, and it has all kinds of shapes. But in the architectural model, it doesn't really matter if they're completely detailed. So the figures are just flat, like cardboard cutouts, and that's never gonna work. So I didn't buy those because that would be useless. And I haven't seen proper miniatures that you could use from the architectural skills. I mean, I haven't looked very hard, but I don't think that there's a lot of producers for that kind of stuff. That's both detailed and the right skill. And the other thing that I want to show is because I was looking around for a proper skill, so to say, and you can see it here already. There's trains, of course, model trains, and there's one scale of model train that comes quite close. As I said, Epic is about 1 to 300 in scale. And the train Z scale is called as 1 to 220, which is actually, yeah, roughly okay. I mean, it's a smaller number, so it means that the models will be slightly too large in comparison. But again, it's not that bad. So this is like a regular old train, and I think doors always work well with comparisons. So I looked up a Z-scale model that has a door. So this is a small cabin. Come on. Yeah, this is a cabin with a door. And if I pick up again my Space Marine and hold it next to the door, it's kind of okay. I mean, a door compared to a Space Marine should be slightly smaller. But again, this is the old scale of Space Marines. So if I take a Vanguard Terminator, that actually goes kind of well. I mean, the Terminator is much bigger than the door, which you would expect for a human-sized door, right? I mean, Terminators are supposed to be big guys. So this scale, Z scale, buildings actually work quite well for Epic. And if I take an Adeptus Titanicus building set, there's also buildings with doors. So this is the Civitas, I think it's called. And the door on the Adeptus Titanicus is slightly smaller, as it should be, because the scale is off, but it's not that bad. I mean, this could just be a big door, and this could just be a small door, and that should be fine. So I think if you mix them together and don't put them too close to each other, I think you could get away with a lot of things. But the thing I was interested in more was figures, because Z-scale really has loads of figures, and these are very well detailed and very nice as well. I mean, there's all regular humans, of course, because it's train tracks. But they come in all different poses, much more dynamic poses than a lot of model makers that make epic style models. So these are some cool models, and you can do some really great stuff with it. I made a Reaver Titan some time ago with these guys walking over it, and I mean, it works. I don't think you should mix Z-scale models and 40K models, because then that doesn't really work, because the visual style is just so much different from each other. I mean, the visual style between Vanguard and Epic is going to be fine, but the visual style between Vanguard and Epic and Z-scale is going to miss, probably. So if you want to use the figures of Z-scale, then go either for Z-scale models or go for Vanguard or whatever 6mm models, but don't mix them, because that's gonna look weird. So next to a Terminator, it's kind of okay, because a Terminator again is supposed to be bigger. But if I compare it to a Vanguard human scale model, so this is my Commissar again. I mean, 40K is quite cartoony in how they depict humans. So big heads, big hands, big feet. And Z-scale is actually trying to be much more accurate. Come on, focus. Z-scale is trying to be much more accurate because it's actually, I don't know why this is suddenly not working and focusing anymore. Because it's depicting actual train stations with their passengers. So that's not always going to work. But you might. I mean, you can try and see what you can make work. Yeah, so that's Z-scale. And the final thing I wanted to show you, which is something that I already knew that existed for longer, but I couldn't get my hands on it until now, is something called forumware. And that's actually Games Workshop illegal, because what this is, these are models that you can only buy from somebody you met somewhere. There's no official shops for these. There's no official website for these. You can get these from your friends, uncles, nephews, brothers, sister-in-laws, guy who met somebody somewhere on eBay, whatever, right? So this is it's impossible to buy directly. But the thing is, this is actual 6mm scale, or at least actual Epic scale, and it's the visual language of Games Workshop, because it's simply copies of Games Workshop models scaled down to Epic scale, 1:300 scale. And these are gorgeous. I mean, I love the style of Games Workshop, and they make some pretty nice models. But yeah, as I said, the problem is these are not legal, because this is people on the internet who sculpt these themselves, either physically sculpting them or sculpting them in some 3D software, and then probably 3D printing them and casting them onto in metal and then selling them. So this is like people doing it themselves, right? And Games Workshop is actually treating those people quite harshly, because they're using their IP. Games Workshop is working on this IP for a long time now, and they don't really appreciate you copying their stuff and making a profit out of it for yourself. So this is Sisters of Battle range, which are very nice. They look really good, like the actual 28mm range, but it's just very small, and yeah, I like that. But it shows that it's still possible to get there, and this gives me the hope that Games Workshop will go there at some point, to go into these miniatures. But because if people are doing this, that means that there is a market for it. I think that Adeptus Titanicus shows that there is a market for it, for Games Workshop as well, because they're still releasing models for Adeptus Titanicus. So I think it's like a viable range, and I hope they once take the step into old Epic again, because Epic developed in a similar way. They also started with Titan battles first, and then moved into Space Marines, and then all the other chapter, or all the other races. So there's some hope that they might do something similar. The one thing that you'll notice here is that this again is quite flat, and it's simply the casting process. I mean, these miniatures are thin, and that means that they're very brittle. So if you're casting this and you're opening your mold, if there's things sticking outward or inward, those will break the soonest. So what these model makers do, they make them quite flat, the miniatures, and that's simply because there's a casting process involved. And some people are cutting out the middleman, so to say, by just selling 3D prints. And these are cataphractii terminators again. Let me see if I can get these into focus. And as you can see, there's still the 3D print stalks on it, and the bottom where it was attached to the printing bed. But the detail on these is gorgeous. I mean, they're beautiful, and they snap off these grids quite easily, and then you end up with this single Terminator. Yeah, and this is beautiful. I mean, there's none of the flatness of cast miniatures. It's really three-dimensional. It's thick. This is a lightning claw, I think, which is very tiny and still viable and working. So that's very cool. And if I compare this to the, oh, come on, stand up. if I compare this one to the Vanguard Terminator, the scale is very, very good. So this is both a bonus for the Vanguard miniatures, because they apparently worked it out very well, the scale, and it goes to say something for the guys who produce these 3D printed models, because these are also advertised as true scale, like true scale Marines Terminators. Yeah, so this is beautiful. It's not legal, so you cannot buy them in the shop. Once Games Workshop find out, they hit hard, I understand. So that's also why it's quite hard to find. I don't recommend using these because, yeah, I mean, as beautiful as they are, it's it doesn't help the. Yeah, I don't know. It's a difficult discussion. You should decide for yourself, probably. And I bought these just because I wanted to see the detail, and also because Games Workshop doesn't produce these, and I really want to have these for the models that I'm making, because it adds a lot of scale to miniatures, to add some tiny figures to it. So my choice is either go to Vanguard, which is very nice miniatures, but simply not IP of Games Workshop, which I didn't know, or go to the exact same visual language of Games Workshop, but then in an illegal fashion. And yeah, that's a decision that we all have to make, I guess. And I'm not sure. I'm kind of in doubt about whether I should be supporting it or not. And they're expensive. That's also another thing. I mean, Vanguard is actually quite cheap. You'll get a bunch of miniatures for not that much money. These Terminators, because they're probably 3D printed in batches by hand, cleaned up by hand, whatever, it's a lot of work. And it's just one or two people doing this and making this. So they command some quite hefty prices. So my hope is that Games Workshop will at some point go down this line and hopefully even hire these guys who made this, because the miniatures, again, are fantastic. It's beautiful. But then also go to the casting processes of Games Workshop, because if you look at what the plastic of Games Workshop is doing, it's amazing what these guys, the detail that goes into these miniatures is simply fantastic. So I hope that Games Workshop will pick up the size of these miniatures with the detail of these miniatures, which is very comparable. So you can mix these quite easily. They won't stand out, but it's very nice. And I hope they will go there. And because the final thing that I want to show is how does that work? If you make a miniature, so I already showed this one. I think this is a very nice example because the miniature itself is not so big. Come on. Yeah. So adding a small person on top of or below your Titan or Knight will really give the model a sense of scale, because for some reason we need a human to next to a building or a model to give us a sense of scale. Simply a door or a sidewalk is not enough. So this is one thing, but I also did the same on my this Titan that I built. So I built a Warlord Titan some time ago in the form of, it goes the other way, of course. Come on. So it has a castle on the back. I hope you're not becoming seasick right now. It has a castle on its back because it's like an Imperator Titan, but it's a Warlord because the Imperator Titan doesn't have a model yet. But what I did is I added a lot of tiny models on top of it, and that really helps building the story of this monster, and also give it a sense of scope and skill. So there are some people on the bottom as well. I used one of the Athena sisters here as a statue. For some reason it's not liking my zoom. So as a statue, yeah. And you can, what I love about this skill so very much is that you can make small vignettes inside of one model. So there's this guy standing here with binoculars, looking where the enemy is hiding or whatever. And there's a guy on top here standing guard, and yeah, it just goes to show what the scale of this world is and what's going on there. So I love this, and this is why I'm so desperately looking for 6mm figures, and also why I wanted to share that with you today. So that's it for my end. I hope you enjoyed what I showed you. If you have any questions, just let me know. Write it in the comments, and I'll come back to it in maybe in a later video. And I still need to do something about my lighting, because I have a lighting setup now, but it's still blurry and not. It's better. It's heaps better than the previous time, but there's lots of room for improvement yet. So hopefully every video will get better, but we'll see. So thanks for now. Thanks for joining, and yeah, maybe I'll see you next time. Goodbye.